Previously on Bone.
Bone, 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 bone. Tell me what you're gonna do, ladies and gentlemen.
It was an attempt to clap back at those that said they couldn't follow up a smash like East 99 by proving them right that they didn't have the content to follow up that record.
The second best job next to door-to-door rap salesman would be Tupac's lyric writer. Yes.
You wrote his albums? Well, I wrote down his albums.
For example, on like If I Could Teach the World, they beg for no Mo Murda, in direct contrast to their song Mo Murda. But they started writing stuff together under the name Band-Aid Boys, which I think we can all agree is a very middle school name.
Yeah, so that's the type of band name you come up with in 7th grade.
Yes.
Yeah, it does sound like a bit of a ripoff, though.
God damn it.
I can't. All right, so at this point, Flesh is in lockup, and the rest of the crew is just putting out a bunch of solo material, except maybe Wishbone. I actually, he's the only one of them that doesn't have his own Wikipedia page.
Damn.
Yeah, when you click on the Wishbone Wikipedia page, it takes you right back to the Bone Thugs and Harmony Wikipedia page. That seems a little like a slap in the face, I guess, but whatever. They all had a solo album that was released in 2001. The other three did. And with all that going on, they still managed to crank out a collaborative record, Thug World Order, which would serve as their last release for Ruthless. But let's face it, this is a Crazy Bone record that the others are kind of just participating in. There's some interesting moments on the album. There's a lot of interesting moments on the album, but I think what stood out for me was Home, featuring a very prominent Phil Collins sample.
So here I am, right? I'm just jamming to the first few tracks of this record. Solid production like normal, the expected vocals, everything, and then all of a sudden, fucking Phil Collins' drumline shows up. And as ridiculous as the concept of Bone Thugs building a song around a Phil Collins sample is, it's even more ridiculous the fact that it works so well.
It's a great tune, man. That's a jam.
That is the standout. They take a track about being on the road too long into one about being in the life too long and asking God to call them home. As goofy as the concept is on his face, think of how deep that song becomes and pulls real raw emotions. That is, it's like far better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first album where we all agree on like the best track on it. Or obviously the earlier albums have like 20 best tracks, but this by far is the standout track.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other distinct tracks on the record, right? Like there's some good stuff on there, but there's nothing to like separate each track from each other.
Right. I mean, if you had to hold me to a deep cut, probably Money. I don't know why. I listened to it 2 or 3 times and I grooved really hard to it with every listen, but I think that's about it.
Well, for me, I know we alluded to it a couple minutes ago, but Bad Weed Blues was basically Weed song, but funnier and sillier and more ridiculous. And Bone is definitely not known as being like a comedic act in any stretch of the imagination, but this was a funny ass song.
Yeah,
I was literally rolling as I was listening to it.
It's funny as shit. I love that tune. It's hard to say it's like good.
No, it's not. It's not good.
but it's good.
It gives you a laugh. Yeah,
it's a thing. It's a thing that happened. It was humorous. Humorous, like the Bone. What the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, there's
roll credits.
Yeah, at this point, there was a critic at AllMusic. When I was doing some research for this, there's a critic at AllMusic that said it really well. He said, Bone Thugs and Harmony are a good example of a group that has become little more than a brand name as its various members devote most of their time to solo projects. And I think that alludes to what Dan was talking about earlier, with like they're just Bone at this point. Like, you know who they are, you know what they are. Everything they release is going to chart regardless of how stagnant it sounds.
All this despite the fact that they have a track on this album titled Bone, 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 in case you possibly forgot that they were Bone, or maybe that they forgot that they were Bone. Now everyone remembers that they're Bone.
Like, who are you trying to convince?
You know what? They honestly, like, throughout all this, like, you have to come to the conclusion that they are the kings of name dropping. There's nobody that drops the name that drops their own name. Even like Ricky Henderson didn't say his own name as frequently as these guys do.
Honorable mention Jason Derulo.
Jason Derulo, yeah, that's close.
Not gonna do it this time. I'm gonna,
Nope,
I'm
not
gonna
gonna-
let the listeners off.
Nope, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
We were all waiting for it.
Nah, no one was waiting for it.
Also, in case you forgot where they're from, they also have a track called "Cleveland Is the City" on this album.
It's the city where we
And
come
yes,
from, so
Cleveland-
run.
Cleveland Rocks is absolutely in the hook, and that's unfortunate because that didn't work out.
Nah, that's a sample that didn't work. But since you mentioned Cleveland, I will derail this for just a quick second, because we were talking about them leading the Cleveland sound, and I was racking my brain and was struggling. So outside of anybody local who would have followed the scene, Cleveland hip hop is basically Bone space MGK.
It's so true.
And
That's
if
true.
I've missed any artists in the middle that did anything, I apologize.
Well, there's
But,
artists.
You miss
like,
no one.
No, but
there's a giant gap between those two groups.
So I mean, there's artists from Cleveland that did stuff, but like a lot of the times it was associated with like the Mo Thugs family. So it was still.
But, I mean, right? And I mean, stylistically, you kind of lump I guess you could put Mo Thugs and Bone Thugs all together. But I mean, like, there wasn't a Cleveland sound really before them, and it wasn't until this skinny white suburban kid tried his hand at it that, I guess it's not fair to call suburban, but whatever, that there was a different sound coming out of Cleveland. Because everything else didn't, like, if it came out, it wasn't unique enough to brand it as the sound of Cleveland type thing.
I got it. You're Mushroom Head. You're just rolling your eyes.
You
I
made me
can't
think about it.
Blink.
Really? Like,
No,
I
they're
guess-
they're fucking new metal. That's not the same thing.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's like, I'm trying to like associate this with like hip hop in some way. It'd be like calling Limp Bizkit fucking hip hop. No one do that, by the way. That's a terrible idea.
Limp Bizkit comes back here later too, by the way.
We'll get there.
They're in this story.
One quick nod to Cleveland hip hop that we did miss, and our apologies to Kid Cudi, who is also from Cleveland. So,
Oh, okay. All right.
but does not have the traditional Cleveland sound though. But he is from the area.
Yeah, and he would be like the predecessor
I-
to like Juice World.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I always would tie him to another completely other sound and movement, not standing out on his own, nor as a part of a previous sound.
For sure.
After this album, after Thug World Order, 2003 comes around and Busy gets expelled from the group. That's literally how it's worded on a couple of different sites that I found. They say he's expelled from the group. And I'm not going to lie, I'm amused at the way this played out. They say they kicked him out during the kickoff for their Grey Goose tour in New York City. And they kicked him out for being intoxicated.
What? I feel like kicking him out for being high.
Is that like Metallica kicking out Dave Mustaine because he was too drunk?
Right. Like the idea here. No, I think it's worse than that, because this is an outfit that literally sings half their songs about weed. They're kicking off their Grey Goose tour, and they kick him out for being intoxicated.
That's so good. That's so perfect.
And he claims differently. He claims that they were going to kick him out anyway, like that they had called him and like told him whatever, and Lazy had come to him and say Crazy wants you out of the group, and so he was mad, and that's why he was wasted. So conflicting stories, but again, you get to decide the reality, because there's no
Probably somewhere in the middle, I would guess.
yeah, there's
But
no
there's not
arbiter
really
for
a
this.
middle here.
Yeah, there's not really either he got wasted and they kicked him out, or they were about to kick him out, so he got wasted. I don't know which is real.
Yeah.
But anyhow, Busy's still out. Flesh is still in jail, so we're down to 3 members when they release Thug Stories. And that's all I got for Thug Stories. Zach, nope. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Soup Bone. I know you had some pretty strong thoughts about this record.
Part of me was listening to you say, like, I've got nothing else for Thug Stories, and I was thinking, like, I could just say I don't have anything else too, and then we can move to the next album. We wouldn't have to talk about it. But that's why you're here, listeners. You want to hear all about it, and then you're going to hear about it right now. This is easily, in my eyes, the worst album in the entire Bone catalog. And I don't think it's close, honestly. The beats are light and airy, but not in a good way, not in some of the more like upbeat and hopeful tracks in that way. They're just like not really there. They're just they're just like I don't even know how to put it, like marshmallows. They're just not good. They're not good at all. You expect it to have some teeth, right? As being a Bone album, or that you expect it to be like the kind of the two shades of Bone being the tough, more violent, more rugged Bone, or the more hopeful, wishful, like brighter day Bone. And this is neither of those. This is a Bone that decided that they were just going to not only phone in an album, but phone in an album where their only real conveyance of lyrics is like not even good harmonies. Because again, like Jeremy said, there are only three of them there. There's, some of those harmonies fall really flat when you only have two other dudes to do it with. I was not a fan. If that wasn't abundantly clear.
So I wrote a grand total of 4 lines. Actually, that's like 4 sentences about this record. And the first thing was, for the first time in this project, I am bored. This features, we talked about a little bit ago about subjects they didn't normally hit, but it actually featured several songs about women and sex and an attempt at sex jams. And boy, that is not one of their strong suits when it comes to writing. I could think of 2 tracks that are worth listening to. So when I say Fire is the standout, that's taken with a grain of salt, but at least all 3 are just, they spit fire. It's a club banger. It actually fits there. And if I would name a deep cut, I'd say Do It Again, because that's like a barbecue jam. That's their summertime. Not the most thug track, but it's the most groovable. And the defense rests.
Yeah, deep cut for me, Stand Not in Our Way, which did have several like spiritual religious motifs, which we will look into a bit more in a couple of albums, a lot more, I should say.
Yeah.
But to your point, Dan, about the sex songs just falling flat, the one thing that I have in my notes is the song She Got Crazy. And I have that it makes Mr. Ouija look like Bohemian Rhapsody. It's so bad. It's the typical trope, which is, I love it when I get to have sex with this girl, but then she wants more than sex. She's so crazy. It's like, no, you guys are just bad at girls and sex is what I think the problem is, and about singing about them.
Too much booze, weed, and Ouija.
Way too much Ouija.
Fucking Ouija.
All right, so I guess let's move on then from that record, since nobody seems to like actually want to talk about it. I don't have any tracks to list from this, so I'm gonna leave that to you guys.
How much intro do you have for Strength and Loyalty here?
I wrote, they follow that up a year later with Strength and Loyalty.
Okay, all right.
Still a trio.
Okay. So here's the thing. So like, here I am just jamming to the first few tracks on this record, right? Solid production like normal. The vocals are like normal, and all of a sudden, fucking Fleetwood Mac shows up. The thing is, again, a completely and totally unexpected sample works, and they turn it into something unmistakably Bone, and it is dark and it is over the top in all the best ways, and it would be a standout track on this. As apparently I had that might be the fact that I could say that probably sounds like I have more positive things to say about it than you do.
Well, I mean, I didn't have negative things to say about it, so I was just going to point out, like, so that like they're still missing Flesh and Busy for the reasons we stated earlier, but it actually kind of seems like they realized that they were weak as a trio, because they started enlisting a whole lot of guest appearances for this record. So you get like The Game and Will.i.am, Mariah Carey and Bow Wow, Akon, Twista, Yolanda Adams, Swizz Beatz, and a whole lot more. There's a bunch of people on this record.
The thing about Will.i.am's appearances makes me question why the hell Will.i.am at one point was ever considered the guy that had to be on everyone's record.
I don't know.
I don't hate Will.i.am, man. I think he's not bad.
I mean, if you like producers that make the same beat 90 times over, I suppose that would be the thing.
So Marshmello?
Yeah.
Listeners, please mark Will I Am This off of your Fairly Kick-Ass bingo card.
All right, we're talking about Bone Thugs and Harmony. No, we're talking about Bone Thugs and Harmony here. This album, I found it is still pretty weak, but it did pretty well on the charts. It peaked at number 2, and that's probably just on the strength of the Mariah Carey track, which actually didn't even hit the Hot 100. It hit like the bubbling under Hot 100. The song did pretty well critically, though, with favorable words about Mariah Carey's part in the song. Cinema Blend expresses that Mariah Carey and Bow Wow join the cause for Lil Love. Mariah reveals she's still plenty relevant and is not vanishing anytime soon. Bow Wow sounds pleased with himself in the song's background, so good for him.
Who wrote this, by the way?
I didn't catch the writer's name, but it's on Cinema Blend, so I could probably go back and find it.
Because Strength and Loyalty came out in 2007, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Which would be about a year or two after the, I would say, worldwide incredible top song of 2005, We Belong Together, blew the doors off pop.
Yeah.
Who thought Mariah Carey was disappearing after just coming off that high? Like, she hadn't made Glitter yet.
Damn.
Well, and
I don't think
like he didn't say that we thought she might. He just said she's not planning on vanishing anytime soon.
I'm just, it's more interesting to dig on the writer than talk about apparently that record. Even though in my notes I say that this was better than I expected at the time.
Yeah, well, and like your comment's not invalid because you're saying like he said something that really didn't need to be clarified at that point.
Right.
But I was really happy with the Bow Wow sounds pleased with himself in the song's background. So good for him.
Hey, good job, good effort.
This album also includes a redux of Flow Motion, which was originally on Faces of Death and was the song that actually got them their connection to Easy. And there's actually a whole slew of tunes that didn't even get released from this album, with guest appearances from like Gwen Stefani, P.D. Pablo, Jodeci, Chamillionaire, and even one produced by Kanye, which in 2007 was kind of a new thing. And all of those songs are available on YouTube. Like all those unreleased tracks are available on YouTube, and we'll put a couple of links. I actually really dig the one with Gwen Stefani because it's weird. Like they sampled "Don't Speak" for it, and like it's not a sample. Like she's actually singing the "Don't Speak" hook, which it's called. Cool. The song is called "You and Me," so makes sense. And all of those songs are available on YouTube, but mostly I think it's pretty indicative of the quality of most of those songs that they would rather include a re-recording of a 17-year-old track than use the new material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
Point taken.
They also apparently at this point, well, the three of them that are still around appeared in a fictional semi-autobiographical film called I Tried, which wasn't like even enough of a thing to have its own Wikipedia page.
Wow.
So obviously I haven't seen it. But it's supposedly about what would have happened to Bone if Easy didn't sign them.
Yeah, it's an interesting case. If they didn't get signed, where do they end up? If Easy doesn't pass away, where do they end up? I mean, that's three completely potentially divergent paths.
Yeah. Whatever. What do you guys think of the record?
It was
I said I found it better than I was expected.
Yeah.
I like talked about Wind Blow as a standout. I Tried, I think, would be a deep cut because I think Akon is actually the perfect collab for that track. Twista's contribution on C-Town was best, but seriously, a Limp Bizkit shout out in 2017. What the fuck?
Right.
Fred Durst was already directing eHarmony commercials, I think, at that point.
That was one time, man. That was one time.
That one time for like a decade. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know, but at a certain point, you kind of look at someone and look at where they were in 1999 and then where they are in 2009. Go, life comes at you fast.
Oh, you're not wrong. Only thing I have that you guys didn't talk about, because there really wasn't much to talk about on this album, I didn't think, but the track Candy Paint, it didn't really fit into the album at all. It was more like electronic and futuristic, kind of like a Bleeps and Bloops sort of sample, but also with like some modern drum hits in there. The flow is really weird. Just the overall sound, it does not sound like any other Bone song that I had heard. it was really like the trail mix of Bone songs, but you didn't have any of like the good stuff that you like in trail mix, like the chocolate chips or those little pieces of like the caramel. All you had was like peanuts and unsalted pretzel pieces. Like that's what candy paint was. There was no candy anywhere to be found in candy paint.
Just
And a
paint.
Limp Bizkit shout out.
And a Limp Bizkit shout out.
It's as if someone dropped paint chips into your trail mix.
What you mean, wall candy?
Yes.
Oh,
All right, then there's
Explains
also
a lot about all of us.
yeah. There's also THUGS, which was a remix record that is passable, I guess. It was full of stuff that wasn't released from their last couple of records on Ruthless. It had like distorted voices and a bunch of remix stuff and meh. So yeah, that's all I have there. Then 2008 comes around and Flesh gets released from the Clink. And the guys start talking to Busy again. Crazy even did a collab with him called Bone Brothers 3. And they seem to put the past behind them and put out Unifive, The World's Enemy in 2010. Not my favorite one of their records, but it does have one of my all-time favorite harmonic rap tracks in Rebirth, which is a baller joint. It's got energy and a club vibe, but still showcases all the speed, harmony, and self-aggrandization that Bone is known for. It's also got a killer refrain that's hard not to sing along to. How'd you guys feel about Unifive?
Enjoyed it mostly. It was definitely more of their spiritual songs that were kind of all brought into this one album, where we've had like bits and pieces of it before, and now we have a full album with that theme to it. And I thought they did it really well. The track that stood out to me was Only God Can Judge Me. Super slick harmonies, a great beat to it. Again, thematically, it's not overpowering, for folks who obviously religion is always a touchy subject to anyone, or even spirituality. But I think Bone approaches it very nuanced. They just approach it very well, I think, for what they're saying. And I think a lot of the messages even transcend any sort of religious, faith or denomination or anything else. So yeah, I thought it was, for what it was, I thought it was good.
I think that kind of sums up for what it was, because my standout was Shimmy Shine. That show up.
What?
Let me try that again.
Yes, please.
Because for me, my standout was See Me Shine. Man, it's large, it's rising, it's almost an anthemic cut. Love the piano riff built into the finale, and like for a deep cut in my life, man, like Crazy Cut's one of his best hooks on this track, and they do some really interesting stuff with rhythm. But then you kind of step back and go, Meet Me in the Sky. Guess what that is?
We knew it was coming, folks.
You knew it was coming, which leads to one of my major problems with the record is that it's like it all feels similar to something else they've done. You can listen to every single track and go, oh, that's that from this record. Which I guess is reassuring to longtime fans, but there's little evidence of the evolution that had been happening on the last two records. Like where they all five of them got together and just said, let's literally do the same shit we've done the last time we were all together.
Yeah, there's not, at this point in Bone's discography, I feel like there's not a lot of variance to what they're doing. It's, a lot of rehashing of previous themes until the next album, actually. I thought,
Yeah.
But this, I did not think that this was anything different than what we've already heard, several times before.
Some of it
Ad nauseum in several cases.
Yeah, and some of it to good effect, but it is still a little more of the same. And they did at this point do like a whole bunch more solo albums and like duo projects. They started, working together. They appeared on each other's things. And really individually, they were far more prolific than I had any real awareness of. Way more. And then at this point, Crazy and Wish take a bounce, announcing that Lazy and Busy and Flesh would be the only members on the next record, which is The Art of War, World War III. The other two still wound up on the album because of some included tracks that were previously unreleased. And I honestly, I didn't know what to think of this record. Zach, it sounds like you had more in depth to say about this one. So I'll let you go.
Well, I feel like this was, like I think you hit the nail on the head with, can't remember who it was who mentioned this, but like Bone, not as a group, but as a brand. And, I think at this point, it was basically just Bone members releasing tracks under that name in order to boost their own solo sales. I don't think that there was a ton of really anything to this album. I know I feel like a broken record because I've said that, several times already, but you had unreleased tracks that were previously recorded for, previous album. I think some for Unify and probably some other tracks as well. It just isn't a contiguous album because Bone at this point is not a contiguous artist. It's more of an idea. It's more of a concept than it is like an actual group at this point. And that's unfortunate, obviously, being a fan and kind of hearing that evolution and having it come to this point. That's not to say the album's bad.
Mm-mm.
It just is very uninspired because it really doesn't have to have that inspiration that they needed back in the mid 90s.
Yeah, and honestly, like it almost feels like you mentioned that they're like as more of a brand or whatever. And it almost feels like as we get to this point and all the spirituality that shows up in their stuff, like they do almost seem like they wanted this sort of cult approach to things, like that's what they were building for, and that it was more of a family and more of a religious experience with Bone instead of individual rap artists.
The problem was they had that. It was called Mo Thugs. So if that's what you wanted, why didn't you just leave that to the Mo Thugs collective, for lack of a better term, and let Bone be an actual group? And I mean, Mo Thugs had like probably 3 dozen different members throughout its tenure. Like that's really cool. But that can be a separate thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
I mean, I had 2 simple notes. Understandably feels incomplete. Some hits here, but plenty of misses. I mean, the standout I'd say was Murder on You. Busy is on fire. I absolutely love the backtrack and his hook. And if you really want to dig deep, get to Bring It Back. As I wrote, you just kind of fall into this one like a stream on a summer day and let the current take you.
You and I react to streams in very different ways, my friend. Can't say it's ever happened to me.
Okay, maybe you jump into a tube on a stream and let the current take you. How's that?
That's when you start to hear banjos, dude. And you know it's over.
Well, I'm actually, and where we are there, I'm actually not surprised. Like, I'm kind of surprised that banjos didn't show up on their next record, because their most recent full length is a super different record. It is called New Waves, and it was again more of a concept than an actual record, as it's just Crazy and Busy on this joint. There's only 2 of them. It's not even the full outfit. Crazy even said the album is a breath of fresh air coming from Bone. We wanted to give this project a different look. That's where the album title comes from, New Waves. We will always be a group. We will always be Bone Thugs and Harmony, but this is different from the norm. This is Bone Thugs. And this is true, as it features guest appearances by like unsurprising guests like Jazzy Fa, Joel James, Casey Brown, but it also features like Stephen Marley, Yellow Wolf, and Jonathan Davis. There were also attempts to include artists like Linkin Park, Kendrick Lamar, Wiz Khalifa, A$AP Rocky, Drake, and a whole bunch more, but those never happened. And this was then purported to be their final album. So there were more releases after this, but it was more like releases, re-releases, remixes, and whatnot that have continued to come out. Like, for example, like Bone for Life was recorded in like 2005, but they didn't really release it fully until 2019 for reasons that I don't grasp. Discuss.
Yeah. So to me, like I think you hit it on the head. It is a completely different album. It's kind of a bummer that this was the last album, that because I really did like the direction that they took. It was kind of like the Bone, but grown up, almost a mature Bone, a more nuanced Bone, a Bone that has a modern sound to it, not just trying to shoehorn their sound into modern times. It sounds very cohesive. It sounds just very good, but it still is, very quintessentially Bone in every sense of the word. The one track from a deep cut standpoint that jumped out to me was Cocaine Love. It did feature Bun B, which admittedly I'm a big mark of. So I certainly loved the track by itself, but it was like super smooth. I don't think it was necessarily as smooth as, some of the other tracks, like you mentioned, Stephen Marley on Coming Home, being one of the other ones that jumped out at me. But I thought it was a great album. I thought it was not anything that I expected, but I don't think that detracted from it one bit.
I'm getting a big old head shake from Wannabone. It's gonna always be said with a question mark. So
It always is.
Yeah, I honestly like I actually really like the Jonathan Davis track. But I didn't write it down. I forgot what it was called. But I
Whatever
too,
goes up.
yeah, thank you. It was the whole album was good, but it didn't feel like a Bone album to me.
For sure.
Like it felt like it was a little disjointed to me, and it was really like it was an experiment, which is why I made the comment about surprised there was no banjo on here somewhere. And it was, I don't know. I didn't know how to feel about the record. I listened to it twice and I still don't know how to feel about it. Like the individual tracks I think I really enjoyed, but as a whole, as an album, it didn't feel cohesive to me. And that brings us to the end of Bone's musical career. There was a bunch of stuff here that we didn't even really touch on, like the occult mysticism stuff that clouded or like hovered over most of their career. And some of that is like I didn't feel prepared to talk about some of that because I couldn't make sense of it. There's a lot of conflicting things. It was really inconsistent and it was really unclear. I did listen to a bunch of interviews where they talked about it. There's a guy named Truth Seeker on the internet who actually got to interview Busy about their Ouija obsession and all that kind of stuff. And when they ask him about it, he says Ouija is just a Parker Brothers board game. There's notes that claim that Crazy believes that most rappers are unintentionally following the Illuminati, but there's no explanation of what he means by that.
I think we all know what he means by that.
Do we? I'm lost. There's also like there's actually an interview, and we could probably post that here too, where that Busy did behind stage. I think it was while he wasn't in the group as a whole, like after they had expelled him. But he starts talking about like his purple homie with the turban that's 300 parsangs tall. And then like when asked about that later, he doesn't remember talking about it, but people have parsed out that he's talking about like a Jewish angel that can fly around the world like 15 times per second and like invades your thoughts and like can talk to you and like guides you to, and but he doesn't remember talking about that. And then there's like people who talk about how
remind me again why they tossed him out of the group.
Right.
Just
ding, ding, ding,
for
ding.
clarification.
We have a winner.
There we go.
No whammy, no whammy. This I didn't know what to make of a lot of these interviews because they're so disjointed, and I will honestly say that I've watched probably over the last week or so, 2 weeks, I've watched about a total of about 3 hours worth of interview footage of Bone Thugs and Harmony. And they give probably the worst interviews in history. They seem like somebody you most of the time they seem like somebody you might want to hang out with. Like they're so chill and just relaxed, but that does not make for a good interview. You get an interviewer that is like feet up on the couch, like energetic and trying to ask them questions, and they're like, "Yeah, man, it's what it is," and that's all you get from them.
Yeah,
like you get nothing. Again, I didn't feel prepared to talk a lot about the occult mysticism that like kept them out of a lot of. I remember when I was a kid, like my parents didn't want me listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony, but it had nothing to do with the language or the content of the record. It was because they're a cult.
wow.
But looking back on it, I'm like, I can't fucking find that. Like there's all the mention of Ouija and there's all the mention of this stuff, but it's not really anywhere to be found outside of the lyrics in the songs.
Right.
So I didn't know what to do.
I mean, it's super interesting to have, a band that has this completely other existence in this, sort of occult setting. I think that's really, I would love to dive into it myself, just out of morbid curiosity to see what's been written or what's been speculated.
Yeah. And I can give you the links that I came up with. We'll post all my sources somewhere here under the post. And you can find it on fairlykickass.com and let us know what you find. I'm pretty limited in the amount of time I can dedicate to some of this stuff. I feel like I put a lot of time into this and then still came up with not a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a very elusive group.
Yeah. But still fun. Like we ragged on them for like 7 straight albums. We like talked about how disappointed we were in the material as a whole, and yet they were still prominent enough in our lives and remained a potent force in our musical memories enough that we wanted to do this deep dive.
For sure.
And a lot of that is on the strength of their first couple of records, but they were prevalent throughout. And it should be noted that while we have been ragging on them for 7 albums, I still love them.
Same. I found several tracks just in doing this exercise that I hadn't heard before that I'm absolutely adored.
Yeah.
There were just like there are several tracks that got the like as soon as I heard them going, yeah, I'm gonna come back to that and coming back to that. And then I come back to the whole record. But there's definitely stuff from all eras that I'm gonna come back to.
Totally.
Except maybe Thug Stories.
Yeah, except
maybe that can go ahead and we'll just pass. I think we can unanimously say, nah, thanks, bro.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us on this journey through Bone Thugs and Harmony's history. Give us a follow on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter at Fairly KickAss. Our blog site is fairlykickass.com. Dan is trying to cut me off hard right now.
Jeremy, because that you're leaving a question unasked and unanswered, because this is our deep dive segment, and the obvious thing is what you're gonna do next, guys.
Oh, okay. I'm a scared.
Let me go ahead. I know you can't see it, but trust me, I'm spinning the handy dandy wheel, and if you have sound effects, go ahead and put them behind it now as we spin. We spin to find out what on the list of artists that we have submitted will be next. And holy shit, is it going to be quite the departure?
Okay. Okay. What are we
spend? 5,000 to spend.
Oh God. All right. So yeah.
I don't know that I like
with.
Go ahead.
I'm so excited. Do you want to talk about how we try to make sure that we span the musical globe with this one, the musical spectrum? So we started this project with the Divinals. It was an interesting pick, kind of fun. We went in the opposite direction with Bone Thugs. We all had some, it was a very interesting deep dive. So the next time we get together for this little project, we will have gone head first. Thank you for this, Zach. Into the discography of one Mrs. Mike Fisher, Carrie Underwood.
Yes.
God damn it.
Oklahoma born, Nashville's finest.
Guess who's doing the research for next episode, huh?
Oh, gladly get some south in my mouth.
I'll do it.
And here's the thing. We were one click away from Death Cab.
Oh, that would have been good too.
Either one. I mean, I'm okay. Okay. I'm not a country music fan, but I do love Carrie Underwood's voice. So I will, bite the bullet on it and still do the thing. That's fine.
Would Zach, would you say you've been waiting all Sunday for this? I can't remember it already. I already blanked on it.
The only thing I want to say to you guys and to the listeners is simply this: prepare to be blown away.
Oh, that's even worse. That's two in one. Oh my God. Okay.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Before they get a chance to do that anymore, I will reiterate what he said. You just head up to fairlykickass.com, find all the reviews, find links to everything we're doing, follow us on Twitter and Facebook as well. And as you're listening to us here on Spotify, hit the follow. And then when the little other thing pops up, you want to hit the slider that says something like alert when a new episode is so that as soon as these things get posted, you'll be the first to know. You can put us right into your pocket and listen. We're going to try and make a joke there. It fell flat. Doesn't matter. Let's just do the thing where the thing comes in and cuts me off, and then we go, bye-bye.